Welcome on into 19 on the Clock, your tri-state high school and college sports podcast. I'm your host, Brad Pushkar. Joining me is my co-host, as always, Jackson McCarty. Jackson, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. We got some movie talk in before this,
and we have plenty of discussion that will never go out onto the internet.
No, God, no. Well, if I had started that, you mentioned it, but if I had started that recording 5 minutes earlier, this whole podcast loses credibility for nothing sports related. And that's all I'm going to give you.
But hey, movies are great too.
Yeah, so. Movies are great, and you know what was even greater?
What was like a movie?
Yes, what I saw on my TV last night for this current recording should be 2 nights ago, probably when we get this up.
No, we're getting this up the same day.
Oh, are we?
Because that's the cool thing that we're doing. We're recording this on Thursday. We're going to try and get this out on Thursday.
Is that the first time we've done that?
Likely.
Yeah,
because I don't think I ever trusted myself to do it before.
Well, and I even think like Christmas Day, like we ended up still having to wait.
We still gave ourselves a day. So.
Yeah. Whoa, look at that. It's a first for this podcast for 19 on the Clock. It's big time.
Yes, we're moving up in the world of producing our own shows. But yeah, we had the Rose Bowl, which was a fun, exciting game. I do want to mention what we're going to also get to is continue our coverage of the SWOC and CMAC.
Of course.
Ahead. And we'll talk a little college basketball as well. But college football, still going on.
It's a beautiful thing. And those Buckeyes have given us so many reasons to just continue to bask in the glory of college football for this year.
Out in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, taking down the Oregon Ducks, going up 31-0 at one point.
Yep. It would have been 31-0 at half had Oregon not scored that little makeshift last second.
Yeah.
Get some blood pumping kind of touchdown.
I saw somebody make the joke of
the Chris Paul meme.
Oh no, that they were going to post the Oregon as this is how many points Oregon scored this half.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
But it could only be the first quarter instead.
Well, they do still get to use the Chris Paul meme at least.
Yes, my favorite meme.
Yeah.
But yes. Oregon not looking good.
No. In such a wild far cry from what we saw out of these two teams earlier this year. You know, we made kind of, I don't want to call it, I don't think we made a stink of it, but we thought it was kind of strange that OSU was favored coming in, at least a little, just based on that previous matchup. But boy, were we wrong.
Well, and we talk about favoring teams and stuff like that, and it's so weird sometimes because it's like, what precedence? It's like this is finally a game with precedence.
Right.
Is what I should have said. Because all the other ones, it's like, if you kind of just throw it at 2.5 points, I kind of go, I think that team would win, but you're right, I don't know what the number is going to be, so 2.5 works.
Yeah,
whatever.
Covers
or maybe
it whatever.
6.5, 7.5, whatever, where it's like, they'll probably get more than a touchdown. Sure.
Right.
But I don't think anybody expected to see Will Howard, going 319 yards passing, but also just finding so many openings for his receivers.
Jeremiah Smith is the opening.
Yes.
First things first. I know in terms of really young receivers, I would say that the regular season was for Ryan Williams at Bama. I feel like most people have kind of freaked out over him, mostly because he's 17, not necessarily because people think he's better than Jeremiah or anything like that. It's just you don't see that very often.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Smith got to have his, hey, look at me, I'm still pretty much a high schooler, and I am destroying all these almost 30-year-old men now in college football, and was just torching them across the board.
Yeah, the one that it was the catch that it was in the second quarter where he was 8 yards out from any coverage.
Yeah.
Stood there, caught it like a punt return, and then took it.
Yeah, and then he was like, I had to turn around now.
Yeah.
Let me circle back.
And you just, it looked like he was catching a fly ball in a baseball game as an outfielder.
Or that he was just the safety.
Yeah,
and no one was around.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then it was also, that pass by Will Howard to Smith over 3 receivers.
Yep.
Beautifully laid in, but also getting the hands to get that ball. That's a combination that you can't beat.
Right. It's horrifying. And
you know what it kind of reminds me of? I don't want to say that both those players are like this.
Yeah.
But it's like the Joe Burrow, Jamar combination, especially that first year together with the Bengals.
Yes.
Where there was just some times where you're like, oh, he's just Joe is just lined in with Jamar of like where to put the ball to get it in his hands perfectly.
They have some kind of natural syncopation. I call it natural. It could just be that they've been destroying workouts for the last 6 months or however long they've been working together, and I'm sure that's been the case. But they do have a natural rhythm to them. That, for one, is just absurdly impressive to see any college quarterback receiver duo, let alone a dude that has only been at the university for a year, and then a kid that just came up.
Well, and not to take away the fact that Will Howard has other good options as well. It's kind of that Bengals thing of for Joe, he had a couple years with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd. 3 very good options, obviously running different patterns, but Jamar and T are long options. Smith, Egbuka, both showing that they can just kind of break away, find those clean openings. Yeah. It's crazy.
Well, and Amico was supposed to be like one of the receivers this year. Like up there with McMillan from Arizona, and some of those. I like Nick Nash didn't really have that kind of attention, but prior to the season at least. But he was supposed to be up there, and I think he has performed very well this year.
Yes. But
some of that shine has gotten taken off of him just because of the people around him.
Well, and you kind of look at it in the same way that Judkins and Henderson are, in a way, where have just Henderson, have just Judkins, they're probably looking like more of a star, standout, alone running back. When you get them both together, they both look really good, but not necessarily one. Like there's coming out of this Oregon game, you go, oh, Henderson's really good. And when he broke off a couple of long runs, I think it was like a 40-something yard rush for a touchdown. A very explosive play that they've been needing from that running game.
Would you say that the setup of the running back room and receiver room make them not really like trophy guys? You know what I mean? Like it's you kind of have to sacrifice that personal success a little bit just to kind of make everything work together the way it's supposed to.
Yes. When I think of like wide receivers or when I think of like standalone offensive players, you don't think of it's weird because you kind of don't think of the teams that are necessarily above and beyond right now.
Right.
Or like if I look at the NFL, like you look at like a Justin Jefferson type with the Vikings, where there's other wide receiver options, but they're not.
They're not Justin Jefferson, right? Like Jordan Addison's very good. T.J. Hawkinson, one of the best tight ends in the league. You're just not Justin Jefferson.
Correct. He is a deep threat, but then you come to you get that Bengals idea where it's like T and Jamar can be deep threats. Are they always lined up that way? No, not necessarily. But I think that's a similar thing with Ohio State here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so their next matchup, a team that I think it's fair to say kind of underwhelmed.
I was going to say they had a bye, but they didn't. It was Arizona State with the bye.
Yep.
But they'll be playing Texas in the Sugar Bowl.
No, Sugar Bowl is
Cotton
what
Bowl.
got. Yeah, there you go.
In the Cotton Bowl.
Sugar Bowl got delayed for.
Right.
Yep.
We've been talking about the Sugar Bowl too much, and that got into my mind. They'll be playing in the Cotton Bowl, which
it's also just impossible to keep any of these bowl games anymore.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. But yeah, and so they'll be playing in the Cotton Bowl, which will be in Texas, which, that's a Longhorns home turf.
Yep. Think you could argue the Rose Bowl was kind of an Oregon home turf, though.
Yes and no. I think it's kind of the thing where if you look at the basketball national championship this year between Purdue and UConn, there was a lot of Purdue in Arizona. It's because I think a lot of Big Ten schools get people who move west.
That makes sense.
Obviously, Purdue is, I think, a little bit in a different realm than like Ohio State because of engineering and Silicon Valley and people being able to go from California to Arizona a lot easier. but you have Ohio State, you have a really good medical school. Yeah. Those people are going to go everywhere.
Well, and especially just like on the athlete side, California, Arizona, like both of those locations produce a lot of very quality talent year over year. So,
absolutely. And you probably have some, you might have family that is out there already.
Exactly, and friends and whatever that are out there to represent their guys.
Yes. But and it's going to be fun too because they'll play this game against Texas. They'll also start the season for 2025 playing Texas in the Horseshoe.
Ooh, there you go. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a preview. Do you remember, has Quinn Ewers and Arch figured out what they're doing?
It seems like Sark is pretty dead set on Arch is my guy next year, which he should be.
Yeah, he should be. I think he proved himself coming off the bench this year. To turn into Texas for just a second, I think it's going to be interesting to see Arch if he plays anything in this game.
Yeah, at least like a couple random sets or something like that.
But I do think Quinn Ewers is going to be that guy up front. And we'll talk more about this with our next episode because that will still come out before this game. And we'll go a little bit more in depth with that. But yeah, and one other thing that I want to point out with Ohio State, we talked about the offense so much, but the defense really stepped up. They never sacked Dylan Gabriel early at the first game this year. Excuse me. And they got 8 sacks in this game.
I remembered them saying 6 or 7, like kind of closer to the end of the second quarter, maybe third quarter. And it just kind of was like, whoa. It was one of those things that, like, I don't think I realized how many times they had gotten to him until they said it. Yeah. But I did realize that he was on the ground a lot. And it was just like, 7's a lot, man. And especially for guys like Jack Sawyer and JT and, some of those dudes that, like in the Michigan game, like Jack Sawyer was kind of the hero that couldn't quite finish it. So for him to be able to be a part of that group that said, no, we're not dropping another one. Especially not to Oregon. We're not going down 2-0 in this series this year, and keeping their season alive is big.
That Michigan loss turned on such a switch for Ohio State.
Which is a problem, in my opinion. Like, it shouldn't take that. It shouldn't take to that game to do it. Or the first Oregon game should have been the switch. Because you knew you were probably going to see them again at some point.
Okay, but let me ask you this. If Ohio State beats Michigan, Ohio State plays Oregon in the Big Ten Championship. Yeah. So Ohio State beat Oregon in the Big Ten Championship.
I'm going to still say yes because I think – I don't want to call the Michigan game a win-win for them because it wasn't. Losing to Michigan is still going to be – if they don't win the Natty, that's still going to be the big moment from the year.
Yeah, it's going to be what hurt them.
Right. Losing to a bad Michigan team will be what people talk about.
Yeah. Middling.
Right. Relative to what they are and what they have been, recently, I'm going to, bad feels fine to me.
That's fine.
But, especially that offense. But either way, it was a situation of either you beat them, you get that off your back, you get that confidence going into the Big Ten Championship game, or you lose, and you get this. And you get this great reset that apparently it took that game to do.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, we'll talk about the matchup with Texas. Obviously, fun thing with rights, we can't really put any of the highlights from that game over this, so enjoy our faces. But we will go a little bit more in depth on that next week. But let's turn to high school basketball now because we're continuing our tour of Ohio. This is our penultimate.
Next week is our final Ohio one. And that one even gets kind of weird because, this week we're doing the Southwest Ohio Conference and then the Cincinnati Metro Athletic Conference, SWOC and CMAC. Next week we're doing the Southern Buckeye, Southwest Buckeye, both of those conferences starting to kind of get into the Dayton area, getting, so we're, that'll look a little funky. But this is our last true, mostly to all tri-state schools involved in the conference.
Sure.
And Brad, I've actually got an option for you.
Okay.
So one of these conferences, there's only one team each. So it won't be, like our notes thing that we've been doing, these selling points. It will just be, let me tell you about this great team.
What you're saying is we're changing the format again this week.
No. It's because the SWOC only has 4 teams, and it gets a little sketchy whenever only, you know what I mean. But so the SWOC only has one apiece. the CMAC has multiple on either side.
Yes.
Would you like to go through those first teams first and not have to worry about picking yet? Or would you like to get the picks out of the way and do the solos first?
Let's do our SWOCs first.
Okay.
Let's get those out of the way. Kind of talk about who's leading the pack, and then that gives me a little bit of time to warm up.
Yeah.
Get in that basketball mindset.
Get locked in.
I can lock in the picks.
Yeah.
We'll be set to go.
Okay, cool. Let's do it. So we got SWOC, and I'll tell you about a team that is locked in right now. That is the Northwest Knights on the boys' side of stuff.
My parents' alma mater.
Really?
Yes.
Right on. Well, they've got a great basketball team rolling right now. They are 7-1. Their lone loss, will admit, does look kind of rough. It was 25 points, but to Baden. You know, we've talked about them on this podcast. They're right now, their big focus, I'd say, is their defense. 44.5 points allowed per game. The offense does have a couple question marks. My big one is they only shoot a little under 24% from three. Do want to see a better version of that as the season works on, start developing that shooting. But Desai Bronson is a legit stud. He averages over 20 points per game. He's the big breadwinner for that team, and I think he can do a lot of damage on his own. So in terms of what I want to see from Northwest as we move on from the year, improve that three-point shooting, find some secondary scorers that can give Desai an off night or two where he can drop 14 instead of 25, and they can still manage it. Those would be the big ones, though, and they're kind of out in front for the SWOC. Then on the other side for the girls, the Harrison Wildcats. We talked a lot about that football team. The basketball team might be scarier.
Okay.
They're off to an 8-0 start. Admittedly, they had a bit of an underwhelming playoff run last year, I think, relative to expectations. They finished 19-5, I believe, and went out in the second round. So, or their second game. So, kind of, you kind of built this up, and it kind of fell through on the back end. I do think that'll be a plus for them this year because I think it provides all that motivation that you might need as you march through the year. They are just smothering teams right now. 24.3 points allowed per game.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the lower, I didn't look. I should have, and I said, oh, maybe I should, and then I forgot. But I think that might be higher, or lower rather, than Harrison was allowing football-wise. 24.3.
Yeah.
I mean, you're pretty close. And Harrison was a really good team, but I think some of those games might have bumped that number to where it's pretty comparable. Allie Robertson, talk about just somebody who can take over. 24.6 points per game, 10.6 boards, 2.8 blocks. I mean, down home in the post. Good luck doing anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it is just terrifying to be in the paint with her. She is dominant. She's committed to Southern Indiana, at least as far as I can tell, and I think she is going to be an immediate day one person. And with this portal activity, not to say USI could be her forever home and where she gets her degree and all that, but I wouldn't be shocked if at least some teams are like, I wonder if she ends up jumping in here in a year or two.
Yes, I don't. You don't necessarily want to promote it,
right?
But or I mean, you can because like it's at the end of the day, it's the players' decisions.
Exactly.
But you are seeing a lot more smaller schools get a star and then be able to go up, to a different conference, things like that.
Exactly. It's like, I don't want to say it's a JUCO situation, but kind of like when Cam Ward went to Incarnate Ward. Yeah. And people went, whoa, this kid is really talented. Not to say Incarnate Word isn't great, and they produce a fair amount of D1 athletes.
But they aren't Miami.
Right. They're not Miami. They're not, Power 5 schools. They're not, D1 powerhouses that can, recruit those kids away. Those are the two, and not really just conference, but like when we get to these state tournaments and things of that nature, Northwest boys, Harrison girls, certainly worth keeping eyes on.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about the CMAC, shall we?
I got my notes ready.
Yes.
Let's do it.
And this is, again, we're back to the division setups. We've got blue and red for the CMAC boys to start with. And we'll lead off with blue.
Okay.
So 3 options for you now.
Hit me.
Gamble Montessori.
Okay.
They're at 5-1 right now. They haven't lost a game in conference. Their lone loss was to a very, very good Moeller team. You remember that one.
Very solid, yes.
But it was 60-25.
Not as good, but
no, right. A very good team, so you have to give benefit of the doubt, but it was lopsided.
Yes.
Very defense-heavy team, allowing about 46 points per night, yet to score 70 on offense, which, slightly concerning, especially through 6 games. You'd like to think that, especially some of those non-cons that you're warming up with, that maybe you'd crack that, but they didn't quite. The players that you want to focus on, Jaden McNeil, 17.6 points per game, and then Landon Johnston, 10 points per game, but he also gets about 4 steals and blocks a night, pushed together.
Okay.
So he's a big contributor, mostly on that defensive side of stuff. Next up, we've got the Oiler Mad Hatters. One of the best mascots, I think, that we'll get to talk about, just because Mad Hatters is beyond unique.
I love that.
Yeah. In the logo, you'll see it on the graphic. It's super fun. They're 6-1. We'll talk about that one loss here in just a minute. Spoiler alert. If you like offense, this is your team.
Okay.
76 points per night. Yeah. We just talked about Gamble not cracking that 70 point. Oiler averages it, and a little bit over as well. The defense is decent. I don't want to discredit that at all, but 4 games in the 80s already this year. You're going to mostly be focusing on that side of stuff. And then I want to talk about and give credit to 3 guys here, because they have 3 players that are averaging more than 20 points.
Okay.
So of that 76, 60-ish are coming from Devon Ely, Robert Hamilton, Terrell Franklin.
Okay.
Beasts. And now this is according to the stats on the conference website. I did see some of those players only had 4 games played, totaled and things of that nature. So I don't know if it's stats missing or they, weren't available yet. But definitely a scary offense that you have to be worried about. Okay. And then our last one here, Cincinnati College Prep Academy, CCPA. The Lions are 5-3 right now, but they have earned the right to be on here because they did beat Oiler.
Okay.
They beat Oiler 76-67, so a 9-point differential. They lost by 10 to Gamble, so 1-1 against these teams on our list. And then they are allowing the fewest points per game in their division, not conference, 45.9. Offense is capable of 70s and maybe an 80s on a good night. And Jameer Davis, 25.7 points per game. That's their leader. That's their guy. That's the one you got to worry about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what's coming up right off the top for me here.
Okay.
Oiler.
Yep. That makes sense.
I like having 3 guys that are scoring threats, because it's the threat of not just all of them going off at. Or it's not each of them going off on different nights. It's the threat of them also going off together on the same night.
Right, and it's take one out, you still got 2.
Yes. So, for that I'll make them my pick.
Okay.
For this.
So we can avoid the issues from last week. Thank you.
Yep.
Because so I can make that graphic again, and I presume we won't have to include the SWOC on that graphic. So I'll just do the CMAC.
I'll put my picks in for that too. Yeah, don't worry. I'll make sure I mark them out.
We'll tease that for later.
Yeah.
In case anybody's sitting on the edge of their seat. All right. So let's talk about the red division now.
Okay.
Still on the boys' side, we'll lead with the Taft Senators.
Taft.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, a very familiar name, Monsanto Torbert, their quarterback, who we talked about a fair bit during the football season, is their second points per game guy.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll circle back to that, but it's just kind of fun to have those athletes coming across.
Yeah.
We
love two-sport athletes, multi-sport athletes.
100%.
Always.
100%. Go just do what you can while you're in high school. You don't always get to play sports forever. Get everything you can. They're 6-2 so far, 4-0 in conference. Their losses include a 12-pointer to Newcath, and then they didn't have the opponents listed, but they lost by 2 in the Gateway Holiday Classic.
Okay.
So a different tournament, not the Hardwood Holiday, which we talked to you about. They did look good against Withrow in the Holiday Hardwood Classic, though. I was, I got to watch a little bit of that game. It was the Friday. I was there on Saturday, but it was happening during the 6 p.m., which is the show I produce typically. So we had the screen in, and it's hard not to glance down at that.
Yes.
So talking about some of their focus a little bit more on the team. They average a little bit over 70 points per game, and they're averaging winning games by about 10.
So locking down, making sure other teams are scoring.
So 70 points, about 60 allowed. It's averaging out to about double digits per win. The players you want to worry about, Keon Griffin, 17.4 points and then 4.6 boards a night. And then, like I mentioned, Monsana Torbert, 13 points per game, 3.3 boards, and for assists as well. JoJo Pouncey, 9 points, 9 boards. They've got a really good idea of this is our lead guy, this is our guy that kind of protects the back end and can take over if we need it. And then we've got this kind of our Rodman type who we're not going to be real worried about how many points he scores, but he can get a couple and he's going to collect our boards for us.
Okay.
And then their sole opponent for the blue one, in my mind at least, is the Aiken Falcons. So,
red for red.
Red, yeah. Sorry. They are undefeated right now, 7-0. The offense is bananas, Bananas. 1 game below 65. Okay. 90s twice.
Oh.
80s 3 more times.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you lift it to that 80s threshold, they have gotten over that 5 times in 7 games. Pretty freaky, especially at the high school level.
I'll take that, yeah.
Yeah, you're never going to question that, and it's also not a bad defense. They're allowing about 55 points a night. And whenever you're putting up 80, that usually means you're giving a lot of shots to the other team because they're having an inbound and all that.
Yeah.
So it's working out pretty well for Aiken early. Jaden Arnold is their main guy, but they really do have 2 main guys. 20 points a night, roughly, 6 assists, 5 boards, 3 steals, just everything under the sun. And then James Burnett Jr., almost 20, 19.9, so we'll just round him up, and 6.7 boards. They're going to make your head hurt to game plan for.
What did you say Aiken's record was?
Undefeated, 7-0.
Oh, undefeated. Okay.
Yeah. The only reason they are technically below Taft on this was because Taft's conference record has 1 more win to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I feel like Aiken, with that kind of scoring and that kind of defense right now, sounds like it would be more of an issue, especially because you actually have had conference games.
Right.
If you were just coming out of this and you were like, oh, they've only played non-conference, but they're scoring this much and keeping teams to this much, I'd be like,
You get a little worried.
Like, yeah, you don't know who all they've been playing, or in a case like me, I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh well, they could have been playing,
Right. They could have been playing you and me for all we know.
Exactly. Yeah. And they would beat me.
Yeah, dude.
I will absolutely accept that.
I have no athletic bone in my body, dude. I'm right there with you.
I lost the athletic bones in my body in middle school, so when I signed up for band, but
you traded in cleats for a trombone and called it even?
Saxophone, but yeah.
Oh, right. Well, that's actually a way cool instrument. So I don't guess I gave you enough credit for that.
But I would go with Aiken.
Okay.
As my pick for this one.
Yeah.
I think Taft could absolutely prove me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think just at this point I'm like, yeah, I like that offense.
That defense. It's hard to go away from numbers like that.
Yeah.
Especially when we are doing a game essentially on paper.
When we're doing a game on paper with numbers that reflect things that I cannot see.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. It's you have to work with what you got there.
Yeah.
All right. You want to talk about the girls now?
Let's talk about the girls.
Cool. We'll start it off with the blue again. 2 on each side of these divisions.
Okay.
We'll start with the Paul Cristo Ray. The Bruins are 7-2 right now. They're undefeated in conference. So they're doing really well for themselves early in the year, especially behind a really great defense. 26.2 points allowed per game. And then this number, I need you to write this number down because I have not stopped thinking about it since I did these notes. 19.3 points allowed per game in conference. What is that?
I wrote the 19.3 and I was about to write points allowed and I'm like, are you sure that's right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
19.3 points allowed per game in conference.
What are they scoring?
I would have to circle back. The offense is more or less okay. That's not like the focal point. I think they were in like the 40.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what your offense is if your defense is keeping them to that.
If I'm recalling right, it's like in that 40 to 45-ish range. So, yeah, they're doubling teams up.
Yeah, that's gross.
Yeah,
In a good way.
and the offense is where it does kind of start because they don't really have a takeover ball player.
Okay.
Their leading point scorer is Jasmine Tubbs, 9.4 points per game, but she does have about 11 boards a night, which that is a massive reason why teams can't score on them.
Yeah.
Because I was scrolling through her thing and it's like, oh, she got 13 on this night and 14 on this night and 8 on this night, and it's just like, yeah, how are you supposed to do anything?
Because you're not putting shots back up.
Right.
If she's grabbing.
There's no such thing as a second chance point against them. If you don't make it that first time, sorry.
Yes.
That's all you got. But they, I would call Jasmine probably the closest they have to a focal point, but you do have Aaliyah Collins, Andrea Dangerfield, who are also in that mix as well. I believe all three of those are averaging a little over 7 points per game.
Okay.
If I have those numbers right. And then on the other side of stuff, we've got Schroeder. That's going to be their main opponent, I think, this year in the blue division. They're 5-2, 2-1 in conference. One of those losses to Paul Cristo Ray by 17.
Okay.
So big margin, but again, talking about the difficulties of playing a team that's built like the Bruins. Their defense, they're decent on offense and defense. They're scoring about 46.7 a night, allowing about 35 a night. So what does that math work out to? About 11, 12 points per game difference?
Yeah, something like that.
Give or take. And then if you want a star player, I do think London Armstrong is very, very talented. Okay. 16.3 points per game, 3.4 rebounds, almost 4 steals, and then she's hitting almost 43% behind the arc.
Okay.
So.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I like a good 3-point shooter. I'm going to give this to Paul Cristo Ray.
You have to.
That's scary.
Yeah, it's freaky stuff. Obviously offense is more appealing to most fans. Just it explains itself. I don't really feel like I have to. But when you see a defense like that, it's very much like watching not a perfect game, but maybe a complete shutout in baseball, where it's just like, golly, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing because I think that a lot of sports, baseball is I think a rare case where low score is actually the most interesting in a way.
Yeah.
I like it when it's just a team locks other teams down.
Yes, consistently.
You see that in the NCAA tournament, especially sometimes, where it's like there's just a team that doesn't like I think NC State kind of did this last year. Mm-hmm. Where they kept a lot of teams low scoring. Didn't necessarily score a ton themselves, but it was like, yeah, they're getting to the 60s. They're keeping the teams to 50. Or like a Virginia team, I think, in the past as well.
For whatever reason, the first example that came to my mind was the Jarrett Culver Texas Tech team.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And the reason it comes to mind is because Jarrett Culver played defense at such a great level that it got him drafted ridiculously high as a 6th man. Yeah. So yeah, it is that kind of team where it's like it's going to be really difficult any which way you cut it.
Yeah, we're like an old Spurs team.
Yeah.
Type thing too. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So we're rolling with the Paul Cristo Ray on that one.
Rolling.
And then for the red division, we'll start with Woodward. I think that feels fair. They are 9-3 right now.
9-3. Okay.
4-0, perfect, undefeated in conference. You're mostly focusing on, whenever I was looking at this team, I looked a lot at their schedule because it was very appealing. They have very lopsided wins on there. Some of the losses are kind of questionable, though. 7-point loss to Summit. And then I don't know if this is right. I want to believe that this got reported incorrectly on the school's website. It says they lost 71-12 to Walnut Hills.
Okay.
That feels giant.
Yeah.
So I don't, if I'm reporting an incorrect number, I apologize. But, that's like a 50-something point loss. That's 59, I think. And then a 9-point loss to Mercy McCauley. So, you have a little bit of question marks on the resume, but they are still winning games by an average of 11 points. They're decent on both sides. They're going to be a pretty consistent one. And then here's where the real problem steps in. Ariel Gee, 20.2 points per night. Leah Akoff, 19.7 points per night.
Okay.
So really, really talented duo of folks leading that roster. And maybe they were both out for that Walnut Hills game and that score is correct or, some kind of something.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
Something weird to that. And then you've got Aiken, a chance. Last week, obviously, you double dipped. I don't remember what school that was. Was that MVCA?
Great question.
Yeah, it's fine. You go back and rewatch it. It'd be great. But you do have a chance to double dip with Aiken.
Double dip again. Yep.
Okay. 7-2.
7-2.
4-1 in conference.
Okay.
That lone loss in conference was 11 points to Woodward.
Okay.
So we're getting a bit hairy here. They also have a 26-point loss, but it's to St. Ursula, who we've talked about.
Yes.
So, yeah, it is what it is there. The offense works well consistently, a little over 60 points per night. They allow fewer than 40 a night. Janiah Hall averages 26.7 points per game. Janiah Allen, 16.5. Kanaya Woods, 13 and 13. So 13 points, 13 boards. It's tough. Oh, and by the way, all three of those players I just mentioned, they pretty much average 5 steals a night each.
Okay.
But they do have the loss to Woodward. So it is this one was my favorite one and the one I was most excited to present to you because I don't even know who I'd pick here.
Yeah, because again the point is to remind me. I know we haven't really established anything with it, but I'm picking who is likely to win the conference at like the end of everything. Yes.
Right. Just best record in the division by the end of the year.
Best record in the division.
Or we can do it by the end of the playoffs.
Because I was almost thinking because I could see Aiken like ending with a worse record. It's like the difference between like picking the Big Ten champion and the Big Ten tournament champion.
That makes sense. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where I'm like, am I thinking who will actually get the farthest overall, or am I picking who I think will be on paper the better?
We can let just for ground rule purposes, because I don't think we've had any that have been this close.
Yeah.
I think for the most part you would still pick the same teams, regardless of how we define this. So let's just say the best record once the entirety of the basketball season is over.
I'm gonna pick Aiken.
Okay.
I'm gonna double dip.
Yep, and staying away, hopefully staying away from Woodward through the bracket and being able to get a couple more.
Or even I'll even say this. I even think if they replay,
might be
maybe they get it this time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I could absolutely see it. 11 points in basketball looks a lot bigger than it is.
Yeah.
Because, you have, like, if they're down by 6 with 90 to go and send them to the charity stripe, they get a couple, they hit a last-second whatever bucket just because.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you're at 11, right? So,
yes.
It feels a little bit bigger. So, okay, to recap, you had we'll scroll back up on the top of the CMAC. For the blue candidates, you took Euler.
Yep.
For the red candidates, you took Aiken.
Yep.
For the CMAC girls, you took DePaul Cristo Rey.
Correct.
And then you went back to Aiken for the red girls.
Yes.
Perfect. Look at that. I do like this format a lot.
I think this is the best one that we've done.
Yeah, this is it's got a little bit of engagement. And if you guys, we are putting our Twitter handles in the description of these podcasts now. So if you think one of us are wrong, or you think I left a school off these lists that should be there,
sound off.
Yeah, talk to me. Let me know.
Yeah. That's high school basketball. Let's talk a little bit about college as well.
Yep.
I want to do a quick little catch up because we haven't been covering them as much. But just about I'm going to say the Cincinnati and greater Cincinnati area teams. So we're going to just hit UC, Xavier, Miami, and NKU real quick.
Cool.
So UC's latest game, they played against Kansas State, lost 70 to 67. Excuse me.
Okay.
They're now 10-2 overall, 0-1 in conference. Next game is going to be Saturday at 2:30 against Arizona. Turnovers were a big issue in that game. They've 15 turnovers that turned into 15 points.
Okay.
You don't like numbers like
that.
that.
No, you don't.
Also, the foul line, they went 4 for 7 at the foul line. Kansas State went 16 for 20, or 16 of 20.
Okay, there you go. So 80%.
Yeah.
Cool.
But also had 20 opportunities to shoot foul.
An absurd total, but still hitting 80% on that many shots, you take that.
Yes. Xavier, their latest game was a 94-72 win over Seton Hall.
Okay.
Seton Hall is not the strongest team in the Big East. Some would argue they're probably the worst. But obviously that can all change. Xavier's 9-5, 1-2, having played UConn and Marquette, the two of the three best teams in the Big East right now to start their season. I'll give them some credit. They played them really close. I mean, they did lose, but they were, I think, within 10 points for both.
Okay.
So not total blowouts. It's not like it feels like UConn or Marquette or any other team is like running away with the Big East right now. But I do think we're shifting into a upper and lower tier.
Okay, yeah. It's starting to sift through itself, essentially.
Yes. Okay. Their next game is going to be Georgetown, Friday at 8 p.m.
Okay.
Miami finished off non-conference play with a 141-58 win over Defiance. I don't think you can really draw anything from a game against Defiance. No offense to them.
It will. Talk about the football stuff, it's like the non-cons over there for the most part. Nothing wrong with it.
They're 8-4. They're starting MAC play this Saturday against Buffalo at 1 p.m. I do want to give a shout out that they are getting some points off the bench, which is nice.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not just starters. Reese Potter scored 19 against Sacred Heart. Dan Lewis got 20 against Defiance. And I did want to point out the losses. Those 4 losses are to Wright State, Vermont, Michigan, and IU.
Okay.
So Michigan and IU, I'd be like, makes sense. I think losing to Vermont, Wright State puts you in like 3rd or 4th in the MAC. Right now.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, it's a good litmus test for sure.
Yes. And NKU has been playing a few games in the Horizon League already. They had a nail-biter 69-68 win over Purdue Fort Wayne.
Okay.
Not the Boilermakers, Mastodons. I wrote down a record. I think they're now 8-7 and 3-1 because I don't think I counted that game.
Okay. No, that's fine.
And it's either they're 7-7 and 2-1 or they're 8-7 and 3-1.
Here,
you can figure it out.
I bet Google could tell me right quick.
Yeah, just double checking real quick. But their next game is going to be against Green Bay Saturday at 1 p.m. Trey Robinson dropping 26 in that game against Purdue Fort Wayne.
8-7. Cool.
8-7. So yeah, I thought I didn't update it, and that's
you were correct.
Yeah.
Look at that.
But yeah, so all the teams. UC seems like a favorite to get in the tournament at this point. The Horizon League NKU is going to need to break through a little bit to. And obviously, for that league, it's kind of just like you got to win the tournament to get the spot in the playoffs. But I do think they could get a little frisky there, especially as we continue on in the season. Obviously, there's 2 more months of basketball left.
Yeah.
A regular season, I should say. But Xavier, I'm going to be interested in seeing how they kind of pick things back up after losing to UC, losing to UConn, losing to Marquette. The Big East is tough.
Okay.
And I kind of already said how I felt about Miami with the MAC. So we'll see how those games start going once they get into them. But.
And once football season fully clears out, that's when, much like most viewers, will switch over to college basketball. Same deal applies over here. You want to finish one book before you start the other, right?
Yeah.
But I'm excited for it. You know what I mean? It's nice that we will be kind of in the peak part of the season whenever it's time to do the full switch over. And we'll be working towards tournament time. We will have to do a bracket.
Oh, absolutely. We'll do it on the screen.
Yeah,
that's
probably not the
part.
touchpad again, but
I think we can figure out a way to fill it out on here, but we'll do it.
Yes.
We'll do something. Yes.
We will game the system and make it happen because that might just be one whole episode.
Oh, absolutely.
Which will be great.
Fun. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my favorite part.
100%.
Oh, we could do a men's and a women's bracket too.
Yes, we could.
That's 2 episodes. Look at us making content.
Yeah, and now you know what's coming in March. So.
Surprise! But yeah, so that is that. We'll have some more coming up next week. We'll talk about the Ohio State-Texas game. We will finish off Ohio High School Conference previews.
Yep.
And then after that, you'll be moving to Indiana,
yes.
I believe, and then we'll round out with Kentucky.
Yeah, which I haven't really fully decided how I want to do Kentucky yet because it gets their conference system. I wish they just had conferences. Matter of fact, if somebody with KHSAA is listening right now, please just build in conferences because going by like 6A, 5A, it's just so much.
And if you are able to change the conferences, You can tweet at us.
Yes.
Reach out to us. Our information is going to be at the bottom.
Yeah.
And for that, thank you all for listening, and we will see you again next week.
Yeah. Have a good one.